In this episode, we're going to do a follow-on from what we looked at in the last episode about capability maps. Because one of the things that's fascinating is once you have a capability map, there are all kinds of other uses that you can put it to that are really valuable, particularly in an enterprise architecture environment. The first of these was a whole mass of what we called unofficial usages. Every single manager, it seemed, nicked a copy of their own and put it on their wall, which they used for things like onboarding, showing people what is going on in the organisation and where people might have to connect to. It was also used a lot as a visual directory that people would scribble phone numbers all over it. So there was a lot there. What we particularly used it for ourselves in Enterprise Architecture Unit was about project mapping. We mapped every single project onto the capability map. So this showed us straight away where there were overlaps between projects, where there were probable clashes between projects, and where there were gaps. It also helped us make sense of architecture integration. It gave us a lot of really useful information about where a gap might sit. Like there was one little project which was a little bit of what we might call glue, a piece of information, a project to capture information about what was in a truck when it left a sorting depot for mail. And for 2 or 3 years it had been turned down because it seemed to have no apparent value, and on its own it didn't. But when we put it in context with a bunch of other major projects, suddenly this little project added a whole lot of extra value to those other major projects. Now we had a small discretionary budget where we were allowed to encourage people and provide funding for small changes to a project to connect things together to make them work better. But we could do that only because we could see from the capability map what connected to what. It also gave us the basis for what in government circles now is called spend control, which is that any project of over a certain size had to show that it wasn't clashing with anyone else. It had to show where it connected and where it supported, and also how it could actually be, we could reuse existing functions. I came across one project in a large environment where the effective budget cost dropped from $40 million to $800,000. That's cut 98% out of the budget just by looking closely at the capability map and mapping projects onto there. Now, the other one which they were using this for, started getting really political, and that was mapping capability maps onto activity-based costing. That showed us that we could identify what the effect, when a project was about to work on somewhere, what was the probable business value and the business impact that it would be in terms of activity-based costing. Now this was massively political. It had huge ramifications for people's bonuses and God knows what else. So this was not something we could have tackled at all unless we were reporting to the whole executive, not merely to the CIO. So this is something that you can only do when you're working as part of the whole as a core function of the whole organisation, not merely one department. But this really paid off big time. So capability maps have enormous numbers of really important extra uses beyond just what you might think of as a capability map.